These past few days, as I've been thinking about Sister Audrey and talking with people about her, I have come to the conclusion that it is absolutely impossible for any of us to talk about Sister Mary Audrey Jauron without breaking into a big smile. There are so many reasons for that. First of all, the tremendous energy that she brought to everything she did. Also, her no-nonsense approach to life. You gotta smile when you think about that. The many activities that she took part in, and not just one at a time, but all at the same time. Her great enthusiasm for teaching, and her intense loyalty to everything she cared about, from her Servite community to Notre Dame football. All of these things bring a big smile, not only to our lips, but to our hearts, as we recall the many years that Sister Audrey shared with us. We're going to miss her, that's for sure. I know I can't imagine the Mother House without Sister Audrey in it. But we really can't be sad over a life lived as productively and wholeheartedly as Sister Audrey's was for almost 102 years. So let's reflect for a while tonight on all the things she loved. Sister Audrey always spoke lovingly of three groups of people: her family, her Servite community, and her students and friends. And I put the two of those together because very often they did overlap. Let's begin with her family. Sister Audrey was born near Salix, Iowa on July 13th, 1914. Her parents, Clovis and Bertha Hess Jauron, named her Dorothy, but her father called her Dots. I don't know about you, but in my wildest imaginings, I cannot picture myself calling Sister Audrey Dots. But her father called her that, and apparently she liked it. She was the second of 6 children, with 3 brothers, Gerald, Delbert, and Raymond, and 2 sisters, Delia and Teresa, who are her only surviving siblings. But she has many, many well-loved nieces, nephews, great and great-great nieces and nephews. Reading Audrey's description of her family and childhood is like reading a chapter from a Willa Cather novel. And I hope at this very moment she just gave me credit for making a literary allusion. In her handwritten family history, she describes her maternal grandparents coming to Iowa from Illinois in a covered wagon. They settled just a little bit east of the Missouri River on a farm in Iowa. Her paternal grandparents lived in Salix, Iowa, right across the road from St. Joseph's School, where the Servants of Mary taught and where Sister Audrey eventually went to school. When Audrey was about 12 or 13, her paternal grandfather inherited a piece of land called the Island, which he offered to any one of his 6 sons free of charge who would be willing to go and live there. This is how Audrey describes it. My mother was the only wife who would consent to living in such a pioneer setting with no telephone and no electricity. The island was about 360 acres, almost completely surrounded by a lake. To go to school, we kids had to go across the lake in a boat, and we caught the school bus on the other side. My father stood on the shore every morning and watched as my brother Gerald rowed us across the water. Rowed, R-O-W-E-D. My mother stood at the window inside the house and prayed until she saw us get on the bus. Young Dots loved living on the island because of its natural beauty. She said she loved the flowers and the birds, and because of the fun they all had, fishing in the lake in the summer and skating on it during the winter. She called her brother Gerald her hero, and she said she loved helping him when he skinned the mink and muskrat that he caught in his traps. She credited her father with giving her a love of learning and her mother with giving her a strong faith. Though it was difficult for her to leave home, 1 year after her high school graduation, with the encouragement of Sister Mary Paula Callahan, she entered the Servants of Mary. Servite life nurtured her devotion to the Eucharist and her devotion to Mary as Our Lady of Sorrows. For as long as her health would allow, Audrey was deeply committed to prayer every day with the community in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. And her rosary, if it wasn't in her hands, was never far away from her. She especially liked the fact that we were a small community because she said that way she could actually get to know every sister. Sister Audrey loved the community, and she gave herself wholeheartedly to whatever was asked of her. She was a great community member. I had the opportunity to develop a special appreciation for Audrey during the 5 years I served as provincial. And I want to share this with you tonight because I think it is so revelatory of the kind of person that Audrey was. Periodically, she would appear at my office door and say that she would like to talk to me. She came right in, and she never bothered with small talk. She just cut right to the chase and say what was on her mind. I still remember the purpose of her very first visit to me was to lay out her expectations of how we would relate to each other over the next 5 years. Her plan was quite simple. For her part, whenever she had something she wanted to talk to me about a decision I had made, or when she was concerned about the direction the community was going in, she would come and tell me. What was my part? She wanted me to listen. And discuss the issue with her. If those two things could happen, she said, she might not change her opinion, but she would support me. That was it. That was the plan. She congratulated me on my new job, turned around, and left. I think I said only 2 things. Okay, and thank you, sister. But here's the best part, very seriously. What Sister Audrey said she would do is precisely what she did. And I always knew that once we had talked, she would truly be supportive. Sister Audrey was the best example of honesty, integrity, and loyalty that I have ever experienced, and I will always respect, love, and admire her for that. Anyone who has ever known Audrey knows she was a born teacher. She claimed that her teaching ministry could be divided into 2 segments: her years at Mount Carmel in Denver and her years at Heelan High School in Sioux City. Then there were some very enjoyable but short missions in between. She felt that her time at Mount Carmel was she especially refers to the years 1951 to 1960, and she feels that those were her most fruitful years. And you'll see why when I tell you what she did. During that time, she taught English, speech, and journalism. She moderated the school newspaper, the yearbook, the contest speech team, and the debate team, and she supervised the cheerleading squad. Now, apparently, the cheerleaders used to go out to the back parking lot to practice, and Audrey would go with them and bang on a big bass drum to keep their enthusiasm going through the whole practice. Now, that's energy. She said, or at least her students say, that she actually brought that same enthusiasm to the classroom. She said this was a period of time, as well as her time at Heelan, that actually defined her as a teacher. For 23 years, 1969 to 1992, she taught composition and world literature at Heelan. Rumor has it that every student who graduated from Heelan High School had read the Brothers Karamazov from beginning to end, and they knew how to write a standard, structured essay. She used to tell me that over and over again. She was so proud of that. Audrey was also a great supporter of school athletics, and she and Sister Carmelita Edney prided themselves on the fact that they never missed a home basketball game, football game, or wrestling match. In the 1980s, she was honored as Master Teacher of the Year by the Sioux City Diocese. Sister Audrey's own words describe her feelings about teaching, and I found this very touching. This is what she wrote. Sometimes, when I stood in front of my class feeling introspective, I would say to myself, I am in the right place. There is no place I would rather be. I absolutely loved teaching. In 1994, after 61 years of teaching, Sister Audrey moved to the Mother House, but she certainly did not stop working. At various times during her so-called retirement, she served as a substitute teacher at Marion, as sacristan at the Mother House, writer of notes and cards for the Servite Memory and Remembrance program. She drove for anyone who needed a ride to any place, and she organized the Great Books program for the sisters who lived here. She enjoyed watching football, playing cards, and crocheting. She left a little memo in her file that says that she had provided over 64 prayer shawls for our gift store. Her declining eyesight was a great suffering for her, especially when it meant that she could no longer read. But she never allowed her blindness to dominate her spirit. And that was so typical of Audrey. She maintained her interest in community events, and she was always grateful for the help and care that she received. Last Wednesday, Sister Audrey spent the last day of her life in the company of those she loved. Her Servite sisters, her family, and her Mount Carmel friends. That's a lot, but I'm sure there are still stories out there. And so now it's your turn. Any of you who would like to share some of your reflections or stories about Sister Audrey, feel free to come up. You can use that microphone there, or you can come up and use this microphone. Come.
My name is Michelle Horslooking. I am one of Sister Audrey's providers. You have to excuse me, I'm not a great public speaker. I wanted to say what a wonderful person she was. How she always treated us providers with kindness and respect. Sorry. How very patient she was, especially with me. I cannot count how many times I would forget to do something for her, and when I would apologize for it, she would say, "It's okay, that's why I'm here, to remind you when you forget." That always made me smile. When I'm sitting at the nurse's desk, I will miss seeing her zipping down the hallway in her cart. I will miss hearing her clearing of her throat. I'm sorry. In her room, I will miss hearing her listen to her books on tape, reading her mail to her, and dialing phone numbers for her. miss setting my alarm for 4:45 every day so I wouldn't forget to put her hearing aid in before Mass, or all of the other little things that we would do for her. I especially will miss chatting with her in the mornings when helping her get up, or at night when helping her get ready for bed. My first year working for her, I was amazed at how many former students kept in touch with her. I said to her, "Sister Audrey, you must have been a great teacher and made a big impact on your students' lives for them to remember you all this time. I don't know about the teaching part, but I do know she made a big impact on our lives. She was a great lady with a big heart, and we were honored to have worked for her. She really made us feel a part of her life, and we providers will really miss her." And on Wednesday night, when she passed away, she was born again into heaven. So I also want to wish her a happy birthday. Thank you.
My name is Bill Beacom, and I'm a nephew of Sister Audrey. And my story is a little bit about Sister Audrey and a whole lot about the Servite Order. Actually, I was a daytime boarder when I was 10 years old in Salix, and we ate our noon meal there because my grandmother was working. I didn't really know Sister Audrey that well because up until the time I was about 10 years old, she was in Denver, and of course people just didn't jump in cars back in 1950 and start driving 600 miles like they do today. But on occasion, she would come and visit my grandmother. Not always was I able to visit with her when she did, but this one particular year, we were staying with my grandmother, so I was there when she came. And I immediately showed her and shared with her the fact that I had found this great pile of books up in the second story of my grandmother's house, which turned out to be hers and Raymond's textbooks. Now at 10 years old, I read Beowulf, I read Plato, I read Ulysses, I read everything I could get my hands on. And she started asking me questions and was kind of amazed because I do remember pretty well what I read. But my grandmother at the time was bragging about the fact that they had a senior play at St. Joe there in Salix, and I got to sing the Ave Maria when I was in the 3rd grade. And so Sister says, "Well, are you going to sing it for me?" And after a lot of coaxing, even though I wanted to anyway, I did. So anyway, I am going to sing another song to Sister Audrey tonight. It's one of her favorites, and it's one of my favorites. And if it doesn't turn out well, you can blame Mother Paula because she was my singing teacher. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home. When we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
I'll use this mic up here. I'm Sister Rosalie. When I entered the community 50-some years ago, Sister Audrey, we had a junior college here, and our community room during the day would be a classroom, and at night would be our recreational room. We went to school where we lived. And the faculty had some wonderful teachers. In one of my years, I took Chaucer, and Sister Audrey was, I think it was my junior year, and she taught Chaucer to us. She had such an enthusiasm for Chaucer, Old English. I was not looking forward to this class, but it was one we had to have. And her love, her enthusiasm for Chaucer was catching. I enjoyed it. And one day, she was an astute teacher, very astute. And one day she pulled me aside. She said something to me that I don't remember exactly how it went, and to try to qualify it and kind of describe it, it's too long. But she noticed something about me that was not helpful for me. I was not as good of a student, and she brought it to my attention. She wanted me to know about it. She was hoping that I'd do something about it. To the point, she was very direct. She didn't soft-spoken it. She was looking at one of the flaws, deep flaws within me, and she just outright just said it and hoped that I'd do something about it. I was hurt initially. I never forgot it. I think about 30 years later, I brought that up to her. She said, "Yes, sister, I remember that." But she accepted me. However I responded to that, she said it out of love. It was kind of a hurtful thing to want to hear about your own flaws. But she said it so lovingly, with the motive of, this will help you grow. And I will never forget that. She was an astute teacher, an astute person, and I loved her for that.
Okay, I'm gonna try to make this through without crying.
I think it's important. We hear a lot about Sister Audrey, but she was Aunt Dorothy to me. And I have a picture at home, and it's my favorite picture. And it's me standing there, a little girl, and my hair is kind of flowing down. And I'm about 4. And there's really pretty tulips, and she's in her full habit. And I just remember her kindness. And I remember every time she left, I had to cry. And when I heard of her passing, I thought, the first thing that came to mind was, well done, good and faithful servant. And there was that moment that I remember saying goodbye to her, because I remember her leaving on a train. And the sadness that I felt, because I kind of felt my friend was leaving. And Aunt Dorothy, my whole life, has been there as an example, and as a pillar in our family. The get-togethers we had in the family, she was always there. The 4th of July's. She's always been kind to everyone in our family, and her prayers were always there for us. And as I look back on my life and I see the service and the commitment that she had, she's been such an example to me personally and to my family, and I feel like that it was through her prayers that I eventually found a relationship with our Lord. And through her example of service, it's inspired me to serve. So I know that I'm going to miss her as I say goodbye again, but I also know that I'm going to see her again. And I find comfort in the fact that she is still interceding for me, and that she'll never stop loving us. And I just want to thank her for always being there.
This is just a personal remembrance of Sister Mary Audrey. How to capture the spirit, verve, and personality of my dear friend and Servite, Sister Mary Audrey. It was she who persuaded me that it was my familial duty to my widowed mama to join her at Servite Convent in my hometown of Sioux City, Iowa. My proposed task was to teach English and become the chairperson of the English department at Bishop Heelan High School in 1978. Sister Audrey was tired of that job. And so it came to be. Our separate lives became entwined as we came to know each other's family members and formed community at Servite Convent, right across the street from Heelan. Sister Mary Audrey at that time had been at Heelan for about 10 years. Her love of Heelan and her support of the Heelan students and the Heelan spirit of the blue and gold were already famous. Sister Mary Audrey and I had participated at various provincial and general chapters over the years, so we knew each other, but this was different. What great fun it was to attend and to cheer on football, basketball, wrestling, and track students at the various games. Even the convent expressed Sister Mary Audrey's various talents. She had used paint from the high school to decorate our 100-year-old convent across the street. The predominant colors were, of course, blue and yellow. Some of you remember as children going up those steps. The house, a former duplex, had many permanent residents residing in the attic. Bats. But never fear, Sister Mary Audrey kept her tennis racket near at hand to bring them down and to release them to the freedom of the outdoors. We became acquainted with each other's families and shared each other's sorrows. We both taught some of her nieces and nephews, children of Bill and Renee Beacom. We wept over the tragic death of Billy Joe Beacom. I taught Jeannie, who married Scott Heinman, who was my mother's paper boy, over a number of years. Then came Rainy John and Laura for me. Sister Mary Audrey taught Carolyn and Christine Beacom, who provided such wonderful help to Sister in her final days and hours. Sister Audrey buried her dear mother and brothers, Gerald, Delbert, and Raymond, and I buried my father, mother, and only brother. These deaths brought our families together to mourn. Sister Mary Audrey was a very creative and artistic woman. She appreciated great music, great art, and great books. It was Sister Audrey who started a great books study and discussion group at the Mother House when she retired here. From 1995 through 2006, we studied and discussed 82 selections of great classical books, novels, poetry, and plays. Most of us who took part were former high school English teachers. And Sister Mary Carmelita, Sister Mary Callista McNamara, and Sister Joan Mullen also enjoyed being part of our discussions. Sister Mary Audrey, in case you didn't know it, was a woman of action. She was never one to worry about a course of action that needed to be taken. I remember that one night at the beginning of the school year at Heelan, I was writhing on the floor in the early morning hours with horrible abdominal pain. She heard me and declared immediately we would go to the emergency room. In a matter of minutes, she was dressed, and I in my nightgown and slippers, and we whizzed off to the ER. God bless the doctor who gave me morphine and decided I would spend the first week of school in the hospital to try to remedy the problem of a capricious kidney stone. Our lives were intertwined in so many ways because of our Sioux City, Salix, Omaha connections. We rushed to Salix when Johnny Beacom, Delia's loving husband, was killed in a helicopter crash. And then Delia moved to Sioux City and often shared her bedrooms with Sister Mary Audrey and me as we traveled from Omaha to see her or to visit the graves of our loved ones. On Monday, February 29th, 2016, Father Albert Rottola, here present, sent me an email describing his thoughts of Sister Mary Audrey. This is what he said, quote, "I want to tell you that of all the many teachers and professors I have had in my high school years, Jesuit years, and doctoral years, Sister Mary Audrey, OSM, has remained in my sincere and honest opinion and judgment the best teacher I ever had. Over the years, he went on to say, I have certainly had many excellent teachers, most informative, with heavy and challenging subject matter, directed toward Jesuit and priestly formation. An educational experience that I am most grateful for and continue to learn from. But the 1 year in my 8th grade class with Sister Audrey still stands out as my first life-changing educational experience that upon reflection furnished the momentum to further learning experiences. Sister Audrey opened my vista beyond the boundaries of Mount Carmel, Denver Parish, to a larger world into which I, and certainly 15 or so members of my class, took the first, sometimes hesitant, and sometimes eager steps of exploration. She taught us to speak confidently in front of our class, to sing for PTA entertainments, to draw and paint creatively, and we even had spelling bees. Later, during my priestly years, and even up to now, we have shared many aspects of religious life after Vatican II, without sacrificing any of her principles. And we all know how very strongly and with utter certitude she put forth these principles and opinions without hesitation to do to this day, unquote. On March 2nd, 2016, when I was with Sister Mary Audrey, who was lovingly looked after by Carolyn Beacom Marshall and Christine Beacon Benedicts, those are Bill and Renee's children, I read Father Albert's commendation of Sister Mary Audrey into her right ear. She indicated that she heard by raising an eyebrow. Carolyn and Christine were holding her arms. Sister had my crucifix in her right hand and her rosary, her individual little rosary, which I left in my pew, in her left hand. Just as I got to the last sentence of Father Albert's praise of her, she gave a little gasp and her heart stopped, and the girls counted her respirations, and she breathed her last breath. Now remember, that last sentence was without sacrificing any of her principles, and we all know how strongly and with utter certitude she puts forth these principles and opinions without hesitation to this day. Godspeed you, Sister Mary Audrey, to your place with Jesus in his heavenly kingdom. Truly, you have taught me that what St. Paul wrote in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 7, namely that we walk by faith, not by sight. This is the most important lesson we can learn in life. Thank you, Sister Audrey, for showing the way.
to all of you who shared. And now, Christine Benedict's, one of Sister Audrey's great nieces, is going to read a poem, and it's a poem that Sister Audrey wanted to have read during her funeral.
I see his blood upon a rose. I see his blood upon a rose, and in the stars the glory of his eyes. His body gleams amid eternal snows. His tears fall from the skies. I see his face in every flower. The thunder and the singing of the birds are but his voice, and carven by his power, rocks are his written word. All pathways by his feet are worn. His strong heart stirs the ever-beating sea. His crown of thorns is twined with every thorn. His cross is every tree.
We're going to bring this evening's prayer service to a close with just one more short testimonial. On the occasion of Sister Audrey's 100th birthday, a gentleman by the name of Sal Villano, a retired Air Force Brigadier General who was one of Sister Audrey's students at Mount Carmel, sent a letter to Sister Karen Brown. He wrote, "Sister Audrey was absolutely the finest teacher I ever had, and I'm certain that scores of lives have been blessed by her love and caring. We send our prayers and best wishes for her 100th birthday. God bless you, Sister Audrey. We love you." I think these words are also fitting for us here tonight. So with a big smile of gratitude in our hearts, we too say, God bless you, Sister Mary Audrey. We love you. Please stand for a closing song.